Hi everyone, welcome back. I am now joined by our academic dean, Duncan Corby.
G'day, Rachel.
How you going?
Yeah, really well, thank you.
Good. Duncan is such a favourite in our student body and in our alumni body. So we're super excited to have you here today.
Wonderful to be here, thank you.
So Duncan and I are going to have a quick chat about our practical ministry training, which in Australia we call vocational training, just to give you a little bit more context around it. And to talk through the different streams of study that we actually offer here. So Duncan, do you want to talk us through different streams?
Sure. So our different streams of study in the practical ministry program in college life consist of pastoral leadership, which, as the name suggests, is for those people who want to be trained for various forms of pastoral leading, from planting churches to preaching and teaching to being a youth pastor or a kids pastor or engaged in pastoral care. Then there's our worship music stream, which is for those who want to be worship pastors or worship leaders, songwriters, worship vocalists or musicians. Then we have our dance stream, which, as the name suggests, is for those who want to use dance to communicate the gospel and the good news about Jesus and to facilitate worship in churches. Then we have our film and television stream, which is for those people who want to be using and harnessing the power of film and TV to communicate the message of Jesus, either in front of the camera or behind the camera. And lastly, we have our production stream, which is for those people who want to use the power of technology to pull a great sound, to pull a great lighting mix, again, to make the presentation of the gospel in church and in church events engaging.
Incredible.
So those are our streams.
Yeah. And so within those streams, we have our core papers, which when you come in either first year, second year or third year, you'll all take the same kind of papers. So an example of that in first year would be...
Will be, say, Old and New Testament introduction, for example. So the way that our course is structured, and I suppose at this point it's probably worthwhile spending some time talking about our philosophy of education. Why do we do practical ministry training? Well, our heart as Hillsong Church and as Hillsong College has always been to produce people who can actually do the job of ministry, that we can release people out into the wider body of Christ who themselves know and we know that they've got the goods to be able to actually make a difference in church life. They don't just know about ministry, but they can do ministry because they've built up a track record of wisdom and experience in the doing of the job. So that's always been our goal. It's not just about theory, it's about being able to successfully do what ministry is all about. So within that, we figure that within each of our streams, regardless of what stream you're in, there are some things that anyone who's involved in Christian ministry needs to be able to do. Like, they need to be able to read their Bibles.
Yes, they do.
They need to be able to study the Bible in such a way that... they can not just extract truth from it for their own lives, but also to give to other people. They need to have a handle on standard Christian theology, so they can say true and helpful things and be able to work out what is not true and not helpful. But also there's just standard leadership abilities that people in any form of ministry or any form of career for that matter are going to need. Personal leadership, the ability to gather and lead teams, the ability to lead groups of people, to lead leaders of leaders, to be a leader in an organisation. Those are things that you're going to need regardless of what area of ministry you're in.
100%.
So those form our core subjects, and then within each of our streams, students then get to customise their training a little bit more by focusing on study relevant to their particular stream on that foundation of Bible, theology and leadership.
Right.
So that's the way that our core subjects work. So far we've talked about, you mentioned before, first, second and third year. So it's probably worth talking about that a little bit as well.
I think it would be. Let's explain that one.
So let's explain that one. What are each of them about, and why would you choose to study with us for 1, 2 or 3 years? Well, very simply, our practical ministry programs are designed along a trajectory that the longer you stay, the higher levels of ministry you are trained for. So by the end of first year, we are hoping to have trained you to be a great member of a ministry team, which means that you have learned the various personal leadership lessons in general, and also specific for your stream, your area of ministry, that enable you to function as a great member of a ministry team.
Yeah.
So that's what first year is about. Then in second year, on that foundation of personal leadership, we're then training you to be the leader of a team. And that obviously is going to require a different set of skills, a higher level set of skills, which take longer to master. And then in third year, we're training you to be a leader of leaders, which again is a higher position of leadership influence, and requires a broader set of skills which are deeper, more sophisticated, which take even longer to learn. So we would say to someone that you should study with us for as long as it's going to take you to get the skills that you need to be able to fulfill the call of God upon your life. I'm sure you have heard many a time where we've said to those students who say, "Oh, look, I'm just here for 1 year for now," and we go, "Yeah, sure, you're only here for 1 year," because once people get involved in the course, they discover that it is so empowering and it prepares them in real terms for what is needed to make a difference in real ministry. They realise, I need to be here longer, because the longer I'm here, the bigger I'm going to become, the more fruitful leader I'm going to become, the more empowered I'm going to be to make a bigger difference in the world. And who doesn't want to make the biggest difference for God and his kingdom in the world in their lifetime that is possible?
100%.
So hence, we're always encouraging people to stay with us for the full journey, because it empowers them to make a bigger difference.
And that was my experience as well. I came to do 1 year. I was never going to stay here. And then I found that the environment that I was a part of was so supportive and encouraging and healthy that I didn't want to leave. And here I am 6 years later.
We're still trying. No, we're not trying to get you to leave at all.
But what I found is that doing 3 years has set me up for a life of longevity, which I think is an incredible thing, because there are always big events that come, conferences, albums in our sphere, but the day-to-day longevity of your own faith, the skills and the character that's built within college, enables you to continue and have that longevity, which has been the biggest thing for me.
And we often get asked by someone who says, "Look, I don't necessarily feel called to full-time ministry. What does Hillsong's courses have to offer?" And to which my answer has always been, the skills that you will learn and the depth of character formation that's going to occur, and your grasp of what the Bible is on about, or what the Christian worldview is on about, and just general personal, team and organisational leadership skills you're going to learn, is going to set you up for success in whatever field you feel that God has called you to, whether that's in church or outside the walls of church. It's going to empower you to make a difference in any sphere of life, which is what we're about as a church.
100%. So you've touched briefly on the practical and the theoretical and the in-class study. How does Hillsong College balance that?
Yeah.
On a weekly basis.
Yeah, okay. So again, let's zoom up and have a look at what's going on philosophically with that. We've realised that in order to train someone for skill, all skills are built upon a foundation of knowledge. And so our timetable is broken up into sort of three components, really. There's lectures where we download in a engaging lecture format that the knowledge and hopefully the expanded understanding that is needed as the foundation for different skills. Then we break it down into smaller groups, into tutorial and workshop settings, where you get to translate, you get to work through that knowledge in a more personal way, to make sure that each individual student has got it, that they understand it, but then also to translate that knowledge into practical ministry skill and wisdom. So we ask, well, what does that mean for how we're going to go about doing ministry? And then we'll create safe environments in those workshop and tutorial settings for people to have a go. Let's practice what that looks like, so that we can see how you can. So we can coach you as you start to have a go at developing and using those skills. And then the third part of a student's timetable is going out into actual ministry in the life of Hillsong Church, where they put that into practice in real live settings alongside leaders who are already doing the business. Then they come back into our tutorial classes and they debrief. How did it go? What did you learn? What worked? What didn't work? where do you think you might need to continue to develop in order to really nail this down? So that's how all of those different components work. And on a weekly basis, students are going to be involved in about 20 hours a week of formal training.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, there's so many other areas that students are involved in college life and in church life.
Yeah.
So that it's a full immersive experience.
That's just quickly, that's something that I really love about the fact that Hillsong College is so centred at the heart of Hillsong Church, because
absolutely.
when you actually come, whether you're studying in the worship stream or the pastoral stream, you aren't not stuck, but you aren't just going to be taking that pathway. If you're a musician, or if you're a graphic designer or a photographer, any other skills that you have previously to have studied here, you're able to bring those and actually invest it into the life of our college and our church. So there are so many opportunities to actually serve within Hillsong Church and Hillsong College other than the stream that you are actually studying in. So I think that's something to just touch on. You may be doing a practical ministry, which you have to do as part of your course, and then you have your study. But then you actually are able to invest your skills and in your passions and grow those at the same time as studying as well. Which I think is awesome. Cool. So why is it important to have the practical and theoretical side to college?
Because you can learn the practical stuff, in a sense, just by copying somebody.
Yeah.
And that's how we all learn, start getting our hands around particular skills, is just by copying.
Yeah.
But we want to produce people who haven't just copied, but who can think intelligently about what's really going on with ministry, and then be able to contextualize it to the different settings and the different churches that they're going to find themselves in, and different scenarios they'll find themselves in once they're finished with college. So that requires people to have not just learnt some skills by copying, but to have thought deeply about what's informing those skills, and what are the biblical ideas, and what are the ethical principles that are, and what's the understanding of church and people and God and how he works with people that's informing and shaping those skills. So that is why the theoretical side of it's so important, and allows you to think about what you're doing and improvise and customize and contextualize your skills in lots of different ways. Plus, it also means that you are better equipped to be able to teach other people how to do this, because all skills, as we've already said, have got a foundation of knowledge and understanding behind them. So we try to create the dynamic where those sort of the theoretical and the practical sides of college are always working together to produce fully formed people who can do the job of leadership.
And I know that's one of us college students' favourite things, is actually getting to serve and build the local church while they're studying. So it's not separate. When you come here, you are integrated straight into Hillsong Church. You are, it says out the front of our church, welcome home. And that's how we feel about you when you arrive on campus. You are home for the time that you are studying with us. And I think that's awesome that you actually are working and building the local church while at Bible college. So I think that's a great part. I just have a few questions from people watching. If someone has previously studied, can they RPL when coming into our courses?
Yes, so someone who has already done some study elsewhere can get credit for courses which relate or are significantly the same as ones that we run in our own programs. So you can apply for credit transfer. But also for people who maybe have long backgrounds or experiences in ministry, and by that I mean 10 years or so in some form of ministry, you may already have acquired some of the skills that our course is training. Probably. In which case, that's quite likely. In which case, one of the advantages of practical ministry training is that you can get credit for those skills if you can show that you've already got them.
Awesome.
So that means that you can get some credit for stuff you've already done in ministry, not just in forms of study.
That's great. Part-time study.
Yep.
What are the options there?
Well, the options there for part-time students are really part-time study is only available to Australian students, people who are in Australia studying, not on a student visa. Okay. If you're an international student, on a student visa, one of the conditions of your visa is that you're a full-time student. So
Right.
part-time study isn't an option if you're a full-time student. But if you're Australian or if you're a New Zealander, here under the wonderful agreement between our two countries,
Anzacs.
the Anzacs, you can study as a part-timer.
Awesome. Is there an age limit for students?
18 is our minimum age.
Yep.
And the reason for that is because we want you to have finished high school, but also because our course is going to thrust you into real life situations. It's actually nice for us to know, and for you to know that you've got some life experience behind you to bring to those kinds of settings.
100%.
Because it's going to require a degree of maturity, emotional, mental, social, spiritual maturity to able to engage in what our course is really about. So that's why we set an 18-year-old minimum age.
And then a maximum?
No maximum, as if you're still breathing,
Love it.
you can study.
And I think that's a really important thing to touch on as well, is that there isn't an age limit. And so if you're in your late 20s, your early 30s, your 40s, 50s, we welcome you. No one has arrived. No one knows it all.
That's right.
And I think it's incredible. I was talking to a friend yesterday who has a lady who's in his class who's 58 years old, and she's decided to come to college, and
great.
She's engaged, she's loving it. So you're never too old to come to college. So if you've been thinking about whether you're too old or you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of 18-year-olds, that's not the case. And we work really hard to integrate everyone at every age and stage of life with people that are also at the same level and the same stage. To have an incredible community when you come. We have married couples who bring their children as well.
Yep.
And we have a space for that. We have a married couples group on college that all get together and support and encourage one another. So there's so many people at every stage of life that you are more than welcome to come and join and connect with. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to do the pastoral stream but is not sure of the department, i.e. kids or the pathway, kids, youth, etc.? Can you change mid-semester or at the end of the year?
Okay, that's a great question. So just to give you some background to the question, when a student enrolls, they settle on their stream of study, so hence pastoral leadership, worship music or whatever. So you choose your pastoral leadership stream. Within the pastoral leadership stream in particular, students then have an opportunity to customise their study a little bit more in line with where within the field of pastoral leadership they feel God might be calling them to serve. So for example, someone who's got a passion for young people, dreams of being a youth pastor one day or a youth evangelist or somehow working with high schoolers and young adults, they would choose our pastoral leadership stream, and then they would choose what we call a pathway, which is the opportunity to say, this is the area of church life where I want to do my practicum or my practical church involvement. So they would choose to do it in our youth ministry, so they can learn youth ministry whilst doing it alongside some of the world's most successful youth leaders.
Yeah.
So that's the background to that question. So if someone hasn't quite decided where they want, which particular form of pastoral leadership they feel particularly called to, well, that would suggest to me that you're probably going to be a generalist, which means you need to have your hands around all of it, which frankly is what someone who's going to be a senior pastor needs.
100%.
A senior pastor or someone at senior levels of leadership needs to know how every area of church life works. Yeah. In which case, you're not going to lose by making any choice, really. So you could choose to do either youth ministry or young adults or pastoral care and get your hands involved in a particular area, or you could choose our church leadership or our church ministry pathway, which is going to expose you to a whole range of things. So there's plenty of avenues to choose.
Love it. Just have a couple more questions. If I want to do bachelor's degree eventually, should I go right into degree or start with vocational courses or practical ministry training?
That's a great question. And something else that figures into that question is that we have a great arrangement with Alpha Crucis College here in Australia. We are delivering their degree courses, so you become a Hillsong student when you study in our Bachelor of Theology or Bachelor of Ministry or even one of our master's programs. So you get to study with us, but one of the cool things is that if you've done 2 or 3 years of study in our practical ministry track, that will give you 1 to 2 years of credit into a 3-year Australian Bachelor of Theology degree. So that that means you've got the option to either go straight into a theology degree or to spend some time in our practical ministry program for 2 or 3 years before going in. I would recommend, and look, it's still a great option to go straight in, especially if you've got a background in practical ministry. But I would always recommend that someone does 2 or 3 years in our practical ministry program so that you can get a great foundation in practical ministry skills. And then on top of that, or you cap that off then with an academic level theological education. And that sets you up with a great set of both proven leadership and ministry skills and a solid theological education, which sets you up for the future. It gives you the skills you need to be able to lead and the academic equipment, the intellectual material you need to continue to think and develop your belief system so that you've got something to preach, not just when you finish college, but in 5 to 10 years' time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Pleasure to be here.
It's been so insightful. Thanks everyone for joining. Can I just say again that if you've got any questions about our courses, about the practical ministry that you've just heard about, please just go on Facebook, where we've got team there ready to answer any questions that you have. And if you want to stick around, our next session is meeting the principals. So we've got our amazing principal, Angela Buckley, coming in, and our 2 vice principals, Mary Kappa and Cam McDonald. They're going to be joining us next. We're going to have a bit of a fun session getting to know them. So stick around. We'll be back in about 10 minutes.